What up, man? Welcome back to Big Difference.
What's going
It's a
on,
big
man?
difference. We are all live, man. On
You
your
said
podcast, bro.
what did what did you
I said big difference that we finally on. My man. Good to be back
Oh
with you, bro.
man,
It's
hey
always
man,
a
hey,
pleasure
we
doing
took a
this, man.
week off. Um, right. Well, tonight's guest, we got a buddy of mine,
Hello,
a good
hello?
friend of mine, Ned James. Yeah.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Hello.
Yeah, I'm gonna bring him on,
Ready to
man.
bring
But
him on?
yeah, no, I'll bring him on right now. But I'm very interested in this guy, man, because I think that in fact he was played at New Mexico State and was an officer, NFL assistant, and now he's back
You
doing
you played at
students
the University of New Mexico, not New
University
Mexico.
of New Mexico.
Yeah.
University of Mexico, right? University of Mexico. So that's the yeah. So University of Mexico got a squad though. They've always had a squad.
Well,
I
yeah, right.
mean, no, well, New Mexico State was terrible, but University of Mexico had they were somewhat decent. It's especially like back in the 90s. I think they were all right, but we're gonna find out, man.
Right.
I'll bring him on.
Hey, what's up? Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you, man. What's going on, man?
Thanks, man. I know the technical difficulties, they happen at the highest level, so don't feel bad.
Man, I know. Thank you, man. It's so happy to have you on, my brother.
Yeah, appreciate you guys having me.
Yeah, man. So, Mr. James, man, it's like, hey, so you played ball at Pasadena College, Pasadena High School.
No, Pasadena City College. I played at Grant High School in the Valley. I was bused out there. I grew up in East LA. Went to PCC, played there, and then transferred to the University of New Mexico. I heard you say that blasphemous name, New Mexico State.
I know.
Even though they played pretty well this year.
Yeah.
But yeah, I got to go to Albuquerque and play there, and then just been all over the place ever since then. So
Got it. How was it growing up in East LA?
it was interesting because I got bused from an early age, so I grew up with a lot of Chicanos, Latinos, and then I went to school with white kids and Jewish kids. So I went to bar mitzvahs and bar mitzvahs, and I got to see white and Jewish people fight each other all the time about the Nazis and the Jews, and it was fascinating because I didn't understand it as a kid. I had to come home and ask my dad, why are these white people fighting each other and they look alike? And he said, hey, if you have on green shoes and somebody has on blue shoes, they ain't gonna like you because you got green shoes. So don't worry about what color somebody, just worry about what color shoes they have. So early lesson in life about how there's really no difference in people. It's just the parents, of the kids and some stereotypes that people have about different cultures, and you just learn and you grow from it. And then being around Hispanics and Chicanos and Mexicans most of my life, and then having to grow all the way across town because we had to go to a black church. My mother made us go to church ever since. I had to take the bus and dodge gang members on Sundays, getting to church, and then taking the bus, 2 buses back to East LA to come home. But you grow up with diversity, and you see how valuable it is in your real life once you get out in the real world. So that was pretty much my experience growing up as a kid.
Yeah, so that's interesting. We usually, like, we grow up in inner city, we see us fighting each other, and you grew up with a totally different perspective. You saw white people fighting each other. Was that totally a concept? You heard your buddies saying the group
as a kid.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, it was interesting as a kid because I saw the black on black because I had to go to church. I went to church on Jefferson and 36th.
Okay.
And
Yep.
Born United Methodist Church. You guys probably seen the church in Uptown Saturday Night. That's what Bill Cosby and Sidney Poitier. That was our church. And so I kind of got to see, two worlds. And then with the busing, and then my high school, Grant at the time was probably the second wealthiest high school next to Beverly Hills High School in L.A. So I went to school with movie stars and actors, and I'd be at Burt Reynolds' house and Lonnie Anderson's house, and then going back to the projects. I was raised in the projects. So, it was just a different world, just a different, adventure in life. And you just, as a kid, you just, you just are where you are. You just adjust and live. And that's pretty much how, I was able to kind of get along with all kinds of groups because I played quarterback. So when you play quarterback, you kind of have to,
Yeah.
get along with a lot of different groups of people, especially when you go to college, because now you're dealing with people from different parts of the country. And so I think that all helped.
Let me ask you this. So, you've seen, luckily as a young man, able to see things that a lot of Black kids desire to see or don't get a chance to see, and that's the other side. Like you said, you were in Burt Reynolds' house, so you got a chance to see wealth. You got a chance to see success. Was
Right.
that a big influence on you, even though you were living in the neighborhood?
Uh, Not really, because I saw that rich white people had just as many problems as poor Black people. I
Interesting.
saw that they were just as crazy. I went to school with guys who should have hung out with some of the criminals that I lived with in the projects because they like to steal cars, and some of them, did drugs and were drug addicts, and all the same trappings that you see with the poor culture, you see in the wealthy culture. They had a lot of divorce, and I didn't understand, with kids with the divorce stuff, parents going to psychologists and therapists and that sort of stuff I saw as a kid. I have to watch the house while they went to their family therapist and stuff like that, when I was spending the night at some of my friends' house. So it was a unique experience, coming from the projects of East LA to the Valley. And then, being in junior college too, you see, a lot of guys that come from a lot of different backgrounds and from different parts of the country. And the JUCO experience was great for me because I played with a lot better players in JUCO than I played with in high school. So I had some good players that I played with in high school, but being in JUCO, I played at a really good junior college at the time in Pasadena City College. And,
Mhm.
they were junior Rose Bowl champs and all that sort of stuff. And so there were a lot of really good players, and they came from a lot of different backgrounds. And, I was kind of the oddball because I was a little bit different, but getting to know Ron and his friend Myron Ashley and those guys, they kind of took me under their wings in the city. And so I kind of learned a little bit about the city life and guys who played city ball just from being at the JUCO, from hanging out with guys like that.
That's
Right.
awesome. That's awesome. Well, go ahead, Ron.
Well, I had an experience too. I mean, I was living in South LA and I was going to East LA. So um, I had that similar experience in terms of um, watching, other races interact. And my experience was great. I totally enjoyed going to East LA Junior College. Learned a lot about their culture. Learned a lot about how passionate they are as people, how family oriented they are, and it was a great experience for me. It was an escape for me, actually, to tell you the truth. I didn't feel any pressure being on that campus. Had a great time.
That's interesting, Ron, because you escaped to East LA. He escaped out of East LA, so he's smarter than you.
That's funny.
I,
I didn't know this. I didn't know this about Ned, but it makes sense because he's a very well-rounded
Yeah.
person.
Mhm.
Never heard him talk about that. So my mind is over here going 100 miles an hour. But that's a great story, and you know that leads to where he is today. The work he's doing on the campus of the University of New Mexico, working with the Black Student Services. Correct, Ned? Is that what you're
yeah,
doing?
yeah.
Yeah.
They call it African American Student Services, which is
Mhm.
I've learned a lot from that experience. And you think, because I was Black and was raised in a Black family, that you know everything there is about Black America, but you really learn a lot working in African American Student Services, because I would say probably 30% of the students, and this is something that we as Black people, we deal with on a daily basis, are biracial. So they have white mothers and Black fathers, or they have Black mothers and white fathers, and it's just fascinating to see that they identify as a Black culture. And there's been a fight going on for the past 10 years in the cultural center, because the biracial kids, which is just fascinating to me, want the cultural center to be called the Black Student Union, which was always called in the 70s. We were black and we were proud.
That's right.
But the African American kids are from here, have two black parents. They want it to be called the African American Student Services, so they want to be identified as Americans. And the biracial kids don't believe they should be identified as Americans because they're not treated as Americans. They're treated because they're black. So it's really interesting to hear the kids, and we've had to vote on it. And so it's really been nip and tuck, every couple of years, whether we're going to be the African American Student Services Center or the Black Student Union.
That's interesting. There's always been this kind of tension between lighter skinned black folks and darker skinned black folks. It's like it's still perpetuating, like it haven't much change. I remember back in the 90s.
They call it colorism, yeah.
Yeah, man. Back in the 90s, it was like, man, they were at I wouldn't like Ron in the 90s.
Well, and I learned a lot from that. Being in the cultural center, you learn a lot about the colorism and stuff because there are blacks that don't have a biracial parent. They have both black parents. They may be light skinned, and they just have two black parents. Like my sisters, I have two black parents, and my family, we're the rainbow. We have really dark, and then I'm in the middle, and then I have sisters that are really light. So it's fascinating because my mom was really dark, my dad was light skinned. So it's just one of those dynamics within our culture, but we still all identify as black people. And it's just one of those fascinating things we learn about. We make fun and we tease each other, but we have to be careful because if you identify as self-identify as black, and that's what I learned, with the biracial kids, they're the most militant. The biracial kids are more proud to be black than the full black people. And
You're
so
exactly right. You're exactly right, Ned. I would always wonder, why is that? Is it because they're light skinned that they have to they feel like they have to prove themselves more?
No, Ron.
Um,
No, Ron. It's because they catch hell from both sides. They catch hell from their white constituents because they're not white enough, and they catch hell from us black people because they're not black enough. That's why they're so tough. It's not because what do they call it? They have to adapt. They have to overcome a lot more. And I remember a pro NFL player. I'll never forget this. Michael McCrary. He was a Pro Bowl player. Played with us in Seattle. I coached him in Seattle, and he was won the Super Bowl with the Ravens, the Baltimore Ravens. I remember sitting down with him in the spring during minicamp, and he explaining to me because his mother was black, African, and his dad was white. And but if you remember how Michael McCrary looked, he was light skinned, but he had almost straight hair. And he said he was at Wake Forest. This is what made him such a great player because I remember our defensive line coach, who was one of the top defensive line coaches. He had to stop Dennis Erickson from cutting him because Dennis Erickson wanted to cut him because we'd be in walkthrough on Saturdays before the game, and he'd be bull rushing the tackles, and we'd be in street clothes. And so he was just that relentless of a player. But he was telling me one spring as we were sitting down, how, you think you have it hard being black, Ned. How would you like having it from both sides? And I was like, well, yeah, I can understand that. He says he went to jail. There was a bar fight. He went to Wake Forest. He was in North Carolina, and he was in a bar fight, and they handcuffed him and put him in a closet in the jail because they said, if we put you in with the black people, they'll kill you because you look white. And if we put you in with these rednecks, they're going to kill you because you look black. So he said, how would you like to feel, Ned, when they had to put you in a closet because they couldn't put you in the jail cell in this small town and wherever Wake Forest University is, because they can't tell if you're black or white. So it's just one of those things you learn in life, and you kind of learn to not judge people for, what they look like, but just who they are and how they are. And it's just been interesting. Football has led me to a lot of those experiences all over the world.
That's interesting. That's true. Is that how, they have no place to fit in? I never really thought of, I knew it, but we do think we have it hard as people as of color or black folks. Well, with two black parents, you could be light skinned, you could be dark skinned. But I'm just saying is we do say we black and we have a cause, but when you mix, it's like nobody wants me. So it's that's the interesting thing. So I want to ask you. Go ahead.
You don't even have to be mixed. You could just be fair skinned.
That's true.
I'm not fair, and I'm fair, and I've experienced that where like didn't take to me. I've experienced that before. Go ahead, Rich.
Well, I know when you were growing up. I know when you were growing up, bro. You light skinned with a Jerry curl, looking like one of the Chico de bars. Ain't nobody gonna like you because all the women wanted you in the '70s. They didn't want us.
I don't know about you. It wasn't me, but they don't know about y'all, man.
Hey, I got.
Hey,
They
that's
started liking
funny.
me in '80s, man.
So listen, so that's funny because I was adopted into a family where the other siblings were much darker than me, and my foster mom referred to who was dark skinned as well. She would always call me. She always said I was the little red boy. you know.
Yeah,
So,
that's a southern term, red bone. My dad
yeah,
said
yeah. She
call
was
him
from
red bone.
Mobile, Alabama. She was from Mobile, and she would say
Yeah,
that little red boy.
yeah. That's a southern. That's my dad's from South Carolina. These part Geechee. They call those Geechees that are down there in the southern part of South Carolina. Red bones. They call my dad Red. That's his nickname is Red. So
I only got called red when she felt like I was doing something wrong, and there was some unpleasant words behind it.
yeah.
Oh boy. Yeah,
Well, you
yeah.
come meet my dad so you guys can have a kumbaya about being red.
There you go.
That's right.
There you go.
That's right. So, what made you choose University of New Mexico? Go to school.
Well, it was interesting. I wanted to play right away, and I looked at the schedule, and I always watched Nebraska on television in Oklahoma every Thanksgiving or whatever time, and I always thought, man, it'd be great to play against one of them. And Tennessee was on the schedule, and I saw the schedule, and they gave me a chance to play. I was going to go to Colorado, University of
Mhm.
Colorado,
All
but
right.
there was something that happened with my junior college transcripts are always wonky. And
Yeah.
Colorado at that time was they were they were just transitioning because they used to be a really tough academic school to get into, and so they were just transitioning into this era where they were kind of accept guys who were in JUCOs, but before that they didn't accept. And McCartney was the guy who came and recruited because he came to our bowl game. But there was like one credit or something. I went on the visit. They said, no, we can't. You got to take another class. And then New Mexico was like, look, you can come right now. And I was ready to leave junior college. I went to get it. And plus I was, I was broke and poor and I needed somewhere to stay and eat and all that kind of stuff. So that's why I went to New Mexico. And I thought, it'd be great to play these big schools because I had friends who played in junior college. They were at big schools, and I wanted to kind of compete at that level.
Nice. That's nice. So while you're there, you get a chance to compete against, the big schools. Now, University of Mexico kind of a smaller school. So how was that energy when you played against big schools? Because the reason I'm asking, because I went to Cal State Fullerton and we played against Auburn, where on
Right,
their home field it's 80,000 people. And what I realized really quickly, it's just football.
right,
Their fans are big. They got more fans in the bigger stadium. But at the end of the day, when we was lining up playing against it was just football. It wasn't a big deal.
Right.
right. What really got me was that when I played at the junior college I was at, we had a really good junior college team. We had a really good program
Mhm.
with a lot of really good players. And shoot, like I was telling Ron, Anthony Miller, who was a five-time
Yeah.
Pro Bowl wide receiver, he was third string on my junior college team. There was never a shortage of great athletes. And I saw that when I used
Wow.
to go practice with Ron and Myron and those guys at USC. I saw all these talented players. So when I got into the WAC and I got it finished playing junior college and I went to Division One, to me it wasn't that big of a deal. Plus I was a pretty good athletic quarterback and we
Mhm.
ran the triple option with the run and shoot. So we always had answers at quarterback. So I never felt like I was ever in a position where I was, hanging myself. I could always get out of things because I could always scramble and I could always run. And so I always felt pretty confident, and I was never really worried about playing. We went to Lincoln, Nebraska. There's 70-something Tom. I just wanted to go shake Tom Osborne's hand at the end of the game. That's all I was looking forward to because I watched him on television. And so those were kind of the things that I looked forward to in playing in college. Playing at the University of New Mexico was really just the schedule and the fact that they really, really wanted me. So, and more so because I really couldn't go to Colorado right away. I'd have to wait, and I didn't want to wait.
Yeah, yeah. I agree that
Mhm.
those transcripts, that is a problem. I had the same problem. Yeah, yeah. Go ahead, Ron.
No, I'm good.
Yeah. When you're at University of Mexico, so your senior year, tell us about your stats and any
Yeah.
honors that you win, any
Well,
all whack.
well, here's the thing, and this is what a lot of people don't realize that I got an opportunity because I coached in NFL with the New Orleans Saints to talk to
Yeah.
Archie Manning, the father
Hmm.
of the great Peyton and Eli Manning. And
Yeah.
I always told him, I said, I'm the first. And he's like, well, what are you talking about? I said, I'm the first in Division I football. I'm the first 400, 100 guy, pass for over 400 and rush for over 100 in the same game.
Hmm.
And Archie Manning had done it first. And I told him, he did it in '69. I did it I think by 20 years later or something like that. I did the same thing against Wyoming. But I told him his didn't count because he did his and the schools were segregated. They had white cornerbacks. They didn't have no black.
Right.
So his didn't count. And mine's count. He thought it was funny. I really like Archie because he's a nice guy. And I said, well, so I technically am the first 400, 100 guy in the history of Division I football. But that was really basically it. I played with a really talented wide receiver, Terrence Mathis. He just went into the Hall of
Yeah,
Fame.
Terrence Mathis. Yeah.
Yeah, he went into the College Football Hall of Fame last year. So I've been blessed with guys, good players in junior college and in Division One college. So I was just really fortunate. I had to play a little wide receiver when I got there because our receivers were so bad. And people don't know this, but I had to play receiver a couple games before I eventually moved into quarterback. And I played quarterback and receiver in quite a few games. We had another quarterback, Billy Rucker, and then he got hurt. Then I was able to take over as quarterback full time. And then Terrence Mathis was even a quarterback. We had like three quarterbacks. It was funny because my first year at New Mexico, we kind of rotated quarterbacks, and Terrence would play quarterback some games. I would play, Billy Rucker would play because we ran the run and shoot with the triple option. And only Terrence and I, and maybe it had a little stereotype to it, but only Terrence and I would play quarterback and receiver. And I'd never played receiver in my life till I got to New Mexico. But being athletic and not having as many athletes on your team, they were looking to try to find guys to play. And I was going to leave. I was going to try to transfer to us because Billy was starting because I had never run the outside veer and all that sort of stuff before I got there, and he was really good at it.
Mhm.
But then eventually I got my chance and was able to play.
That's awesome.
So
That's awesome.
Ned, with you being a black quarterback, I mean, obviously today that position has changed on pretty much all levels: high school, college, and the NFL. With your experience in the NFL as a coach, um, what has created this big push to get black quarterbacks?
I don't believe there really is a big push to get black quarterbacks. Black quarterbacks have always been capable. My idol, Jefferson Street, Joe Gilliam. I got to walk down Jefferson Street in Tennessee, where he was the legend. Initially the first black quarterback with the Steelers. Um, but I don't think there really is a push. I think the rules favor the quarterbacks. That's why you have these quarterbacks playing at 65 years old on Social Security, and they're able to still keep playing because you can't touch them.
You're
And so
right.
that's why these stiffs can play. You got the Jared Goffs and these guys that are just pocket guys. Even though you have these really athletic guys like Lamar Jackson and those guys that are just ripping it up, athletically at the quarterback position. The NFL game is a little bit different than the college game. So, you have to be careful with the quarterback position in the pros because, and now they're throwing so much money at them. You don't really want your quarterback getting knocked around as much as people would think. Um, is the game changing? I don't know. I still think you got to play from the pocket at quarterback. The Lamar Jacksons, the Deshaun Watsons, the Kyler Murrays, all these guys that are run around guys. It's going to be interesting. The game is changing. We're old people now. The game is transitioning to these athletic guys, the Patrick Mahomes and those kind of guys. But we'll see. I mean, Patrick's in a really good system with Andy Reid. I love Andy because Andy's an East LA guy. I mean, he hires a lot of Chicanos. He's probably people don't recognize him for this, but he's the most He's hired and brought up the most Hispanic coaches than any coach in the NFL, and that's because he was raised in East LA. And so we joke about that all the time because we're both East LA guys, and how we had a Mexican influence in our little league and all that sort of stuff. Um, but uh, yeah, the pro game, Ron, with the quarterbacks and the athleticism of the quarterback, that's still to be determined. It's interesting because when a white guy is athletic, you hear this thing about him being the greatest. Like Elway was an athletic guy, but he also played in that West Coast offense, and he had to play from the pocket.
Mhm.
And they want to compare. They always want to try to compare black to black and white to white. And that's why I really love Warren Moon. I got a chance to work with Warren Moon up in Seattle, and him and John Clayton on ESPN really went after each other because Clayton wanted to compare Cam Newton to all these other black quarterbacks, and Warren was like, no, you got to compare him to John Elway because John Elway was 6'5" and Cam's 6'5". He's not like
Mhm.
short like those. And so you have to really be careful that you don't give the stereotypical image to these black quarterbacks. You just have to say they're quarterbacks and don't say that they're athletes or what have you.
Yeah.
The game is changing, and Patrick Mahomes, I'm really proud of him. He's a biracial kid that identifies as black, and he's a guy that you have to be careful because he's one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time. But you hear the hesitancy and people wanting to call him the greatest of all time because he doesn't fit the stereotype of the Tom Brady's, the Peyton Mannings, the Phillip Rivers, those stiffs that played in the pocket. So the game is changing, and so you just really have to be careful. That position is a cerebral position, and a lot of times, white people have a hard time with identifying us with being intellectual, and so I saw that with Steve McNair, trying to figure out how to use him and use his style of play. But it all, amounts to the same thing. You have to win, and everybody's looking for who's going to be that next piece to the puzzle to help them win games.
So you do. So you think that stereotype has been removed or changed, and if so, why? Who? How did it happen?
They just don't like black people. I mean, if you're a black quarterback, it's hard for them to make you the face of the organization. And I know that sounds harsh, but a lot of times they don't want the face of the organization to be a black face, whether it's the head coach, whether it's the general manager or the quarterback, because the quarterback is really the face. And so a lot of times they want a face that looks like, what the Wall Street guys look like. They want those kind of faces. So, and a lot of times, people don't think that really is an issue, but it does become an issue when it becomes an issue when black quarterbacks play it. And I learned this from Warren Moon. Warren Moon was the one who really kind of coached me because Warren, later in his career, he made the Houston Oilers have a second and third string black quarterback. It's not the first string quarterbacks. It's the Elvis Gerback that sits on the bench for 10 years in the NFL, makes a salary as the third string quarterback. It goes from team to team because he laughs at Seinfeld jokes and he laughs at the quarterbacks coaches who are all white guys who are essentially the brain trust of the offense. And so you have they want guys like themselves in those quarterback rooms. And if you're a black quarterback, you better be starting or you're going to be looking for a job. So it's little things like that people don't hit at. And, I've been on a lot of these NFL committees that talk about, putting blacks in positions in the business arena in the NFL so those stereotypes are kind of, quashed because you don't know who's really running a lot of these organizations behind the scenes. And that's important because if we're on the field, we should also be able to be in management and on the business side of the NFL as well.
Ned, you mentioned to me that there's a handful of guys that's in charge of this NFL agenda, right?
What do you mean by agenda?
Well, just how everything is ran. What's accepted, what's not accepted, how we do things, who we let off the hook, who we want to be a part of this.
I don't necessarily think that's the case. I think when you have, almost 80% of your workforce being of color, in the ownership, which really runs the league through the commissioner's office, they have to pay attention because, these players, have a lot of power. And that's the one thing I enjoyed about being an NFL as opposed to a college coach. was that the players have the power, and if you're mistreated, they call people out. Like, you're a black coach, and someone does something, one of these head coaches, or I don't care if it's Jeff Fisher, Andy Reid, if it's Bill Belichick. Oh, those black players are going to let them know. Hey, look, what, you don't do that to the white coach. Well, why are you doing it to Ned? Well, why you do? I mean, I just remember my first experience in the NFL, just trying my hardest to do everything right because I didn't want to get fired, and just having the support of young black men who are in their careers trying to strive to do something, make their lives better, make their generation family better, um, and having that support. And that was something that I really enjoyed in pros, that's now going to filter into college, because they're going to start having to pay these college players, and that's what they're afraid of at these universities, that these players are going to start having some power now. If you're going to have to pay them, it comes with power.
Hmm. So how effective do you think the Rooney Rule has been?
It's been really effective. The NFL's done a really good job. The NFL has done a good job, more so even with black uh, people in the organizations, women in the organizations, black women in the organizations, in the scouting departments. But primarily, like I said, I sat on this NFL committee just recently, and the one thing I'm really um, and Kim Pagula, the owner of she's the wife of the owner of the Buffalo Bills. She's
Mhm.
really made a push for blacks to be involved in the business part of the NFL, because that's where they found that we were lacking as far as our input and our um, inclusion in the NFL, because there weren't enough blacks in those positions that make the real decisions, which involve the money. And she has really done a great job of putting, if you're the salary cap guy, or if you're the general managers and all that sort of stuff you're seeing in scouting and coaching, and people talk about the black head coaches and the black general managers and all that. That's not really the people who really handle stuff. The people who handle stuff are the people in that business office that handle the money. And so that's where you can make great change. That's where you can get diversity and inclusion within those organizations, and possibly someday an owner of an NFL franchise, a black owner of an NFL franchise.
Got it. So we got the Serena sisters, who are, I guess, the majority owner of the Miami Dolphins. You got Magic Johnson in the Washington Wizards. That's the great kind of. I was just going to ask you about that. What do you think if it would take, or will ever happen? We have a black majority owner of one of these top end team, like a Dallas Cowboys or a Rams or a Raiders or something like that.
I think it'd be fantastic. I think those are the NFL is the king right now. I mean, NFL kind of runs things, as you're seeing, as far as the popularity of the sport in this country. And they're playing all around the world now, because they pretty much own the year. I mean, they own the draft. I mean, anything that has to deal with NFL. It's funny because doing the podcast with you guys, and Ron knows I've had Ron on with the radio show in Albuquerque. Um, what you find, it's I didn't really notice because I'm not a journalist, and they said, Ned, the reason why, and I don't want to do it full time. They want me on all the time there, and I just do it, part time. If they want to throw a little money at me, I'll go and do some radio spots or whatever. But they're like, hey, Ned, we could use you every week, year round, because that's how big football is. They're saying it with their business model, they can talk football 365 days a year, and they'll keep their audience. It's when they don't talk about football is when they lose their radio audience. And so
Mm.
that's been studied and surveyed. That's why football. That's how popular uh, NFL, and with my background with the NFL and coaching and playing, and just the whole diversity thing, they don't maybe like that so much, but they like the NFL's stuff, the language I can speak, as far as how the games are going. But I always sprinkle in a little bit of culture, just so they are aware that there are some things that we all should address, and all should understand at times.
Right. Got to keep them honest.
Yeah. So what do you think about the NFL? NFL makes more money than basketball. It makes more money in baseball, but both in baseball, I'm sorry, in the NBA. So both in baseball and the NBA, they have guaranteed contracts. Do you ever see in NFL's players getting guaranteed contracts, even though the NFL makes more money than baseball and basketball?
Well, you see, the first black player to ever have the guaranteed contract, and they say he's a sexual predator, but he got 230 million guaranteed. So I mean, they can do it if they want to do it. I mean, they just choose not to. It's really tough because that position of quarterback, they make so much money, and they're the second worst athletes on the field next to the kicker and the punter. I always joke about that. You know, you have your outliers of Lamar Jacksons or whatever, but athletically, the quarterback is the worst. And I played quarterback. I'm not that great athlete. So, you know, I always joke about that, but I'm really serious because I'm saying you're giving the worst athlete the most money, and it doesn't really fit. I mean, you know, wide receivers don't make more money, and running backs and
Mm-hmm.
all these other positions because they kind of just use them as a factory and just keep running them in and out. But they think this quarterback thing is this valuable. That's why they get paid so much more money. But that's just how it is. That's just how the NFL is. It's just that's how the structure of it is, and they have enough money they can kind of call the shots on how they want things set up.
You know, I was always curious about something. I want to ask you about, NFL. You have players that are on their franchise tag, right? So they're in their contract year. They're on a franchise tag. They get 14 million guaranteed. Like for example, Le'Veon Bell, but didn't want to play for the 14 million. I was always curious is that's $14 million guaranteed. They may have not given you a long deal, but so what? That's 14 million in 1 year. But these players say they don't like the franchise tag. Is this something I don't know? Or is it just they just want that long-term deal so they can feel that they're wanted or getting
No, it's not that they want it; they just want more money. It's just more money. It's not about the franchise tag itself. It's about the fact that they believe it's like take for example Lamar Jackson.
mm-hmm,
He played on the franchise tag, but he says, "Okay, I'm going to do it one time. That's it. And then once I'm out of it, the next year you guys are going to pay,
mm-hmm,
and I'm not coming in as a result of that." So you could do it either way. You know, Le'Veon Bell did it before. You know, when they put the franchise tag, he says, "I'm not playing under the franchise," so he sat out a whole year. These guys make enough money. It's just the principle of, hey, I'm worth more, and you just have to you make that gamble. Sometimes the gamble pays off. Ezekiel Elliott, he did the same thing. He had 2 years left. He was smart. He says, I'm not even going to talk to him. I'm going to go to Cabo San Lucas. I'm one of the top running backs in the NFL. I got to get paid before I know I'm going to decline physically, and they're not going to want to pay me. So it's a business deal. That's the thing that a lot of people don't realize, that it is a business, and they're going to take every opportunity they can. I knew a guy who took a pay cut. They said, "Hey, if you take a pay cut, we're going to keep you on the team. You play middle linebacker, you make $6 million. That's too much. We need you to take a pay cut." He took a pay cut. They cut him anyway. And the players probably, this is what I liked about being black and having black players. Oh,
mm-hmm,
I saw Eddie George. I saw Kevin Carter. I saw Javon Curse. I saw Samari Derek Mason. All these Pro Bowlers get in a circle, and Fisher comes, head coach comes out. What's going on? I mean, I'm talking rebellion. Like, nigga, don't talk to us. You better not come to me and ask me to take a pay cut, because Godfrey was a leader. He was one of the family man, a good Christian man. Everybody on the team liked the guy. It's hard when there's a guy that everybody can get along with, it, that everybody looks up to and listens to, and he was that guy. And he takes a pay cut, and then we get this free agent guy who couldn't even long snap, but one of the scouts was a really good scout, found him, and he could play middle linebacker, and he thought, oh, we could get away with him playing middle linebacker, so they can make a little money on the cheap. They keep this guy, and then they cut. Now Randall Godfrey went and played somewhere else, but at the same time, these players are like, oh, so we're doing that now. So we're telling people, we're promising them, and then we're reneging. Okay, just don't walk over here and ask me to take no pay cut. I mean, Eddie George, Steve McNair, all of them sitting in the circle, and we're supposed to be in stretch lines. Everybody else is in stretch lines, but they in a circle because they're all the big money guys, all black, and saying, oh, you gonna do us? And the guy who was taking his place was a white boy, middle linebacker.
mm.
Oh, so you gonna do us like this? So those are the kind of business things that I saw in the NFL that I really respected, and understood, because these players understand their value. And these guys, these are Pro Bowl players. Some of them are some of the most phenomenal athletes you'll ever see play football. And yet, at the same time, it's a business. They have to look out for their families, and a lot of them are really smart that way.
That's interesting because, I think a lot of players may have got looked at a certain way because a lot of them, like during the Colin Kaepernick situation, also this kicker from KC and what he said. But, a lot of people saying these players didn't stand up for Colin Kaepernick. So are they doing that in private, or they just turn their back on him?
No, there were a lot of players that stood up for Colin Kaepernick, and they got, you know, it's all media, it's how all perception, it's all, this kicker from Kansas City. you know, that's why you got to have black media people. That's why you got to have Stephen A. Smith, and you got to have,
Right.
you know, black
Right.
Shannon Sharps and those kind of guys. You got to have, because the narrative is set. The golfer that, got all the charges dropped after allegedly dragging a police officer, and being arrested. You don't hear the benefit of the doubt with us when something like that happens, as opposed to when one of them happened. I mean, this Chase Buttaker, what he said about women and what he said about, basically Christian nationalism, uh,
Mm-hmm.
it kind of got, hey, well, he's entitled to his opinion. Whereas is Kaepernick, is essentially blackballed for taking the knee. And I still have people. We had kids at the University of New Mexico take a knee. It was at Air Force. It was a wonky thing where we had to do the national anthem in the middle of the game because it was thunder and lightning, and they couldn't come out initially for the national anthem, and then they had the players out, and then they started playing the national anthem, and kids started taking a knee because of Kaepernick. And you would not believe how many boosters New Mexico lost as a result of that. The
Wow.
people that they would never come back unless those kids' scholarships were taken, and those kids were banned from the campus, and they wanted them off the campus by that week. And that was the middle of the season. And I mean, it was. I mean, we had press conferences. It was trying to meet as a community. We had the chief of police for the city of Albuquerque asked to participate in the roundtable session because one of the kids who took a knee's brother was in the military. So it was all this, military stuff that they were disrespecting the flag and yada, 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 these kids. And the police chief told the head football coach, Bob Davie, I'll send somebody black over there. I don't believe in what those kids did, so I'm not going to participate in this roundtable to speak on exactly, what the issues were, what the community is protesting about. I don't want to have anything to do with that. This is the chief of police of the city, so what happens to us if we get picked up. And I got stories about that all day, but it's just one of those unfortunate things that we have to face when you have this media that does not give us the same benefit of the rights as they do for others.
Yeah. So did they end up kicking those kids out of school?
No, they played too
Okay,
well.
good.
They were too good. If they weren't good, they would have kicked them out. They were too good. They weren't kicked. That's how the head coaches get paid. We went to a bowl game that year. So I mean, it was an issue because Bob had to address it because these boosters were pulling their money out. They wanted those kids gone, but we kind of spun it. They spun it in a way that they said the kids didn't apologize. None of the kids apologized, but they
Uh-huh.
spun it in a way that made the kids able to still play and not really apologize or anything. They just said, "Hey, this is what we thought about it, and this is why we did it."
That's interesting. That's interesting. It's like, I was looking at this. When kneeling before, I've always tried to figure out what was this big struggle about white people and kneeling in front of something. Kneeling actually shows submission. You kneel when you pray. I mean, people kneel before the king and ask
I
for
don't even think
his.
I don't even think that was the issue. The issue
Okay.
was someone noticed it because I've been coaching in the NFL for I don't know how long, and most of the time during the national anthem, guys are back there joking around, getting taped. Some teams stand at attention for the national anthem. Some teams. It only came to recognition when Colin Kaepernick was sitting down because he wasn't even going to kneel. He was just going to sit in the back. And the
Mm-hmm.
guy asked him to get up and kneel. And he said he'd been doing it for 2 years already. He never stood for the national anthem. and then that's where the ball got rolling.
Wow. Wow. So the owners were pretty much just blackballed him. They said that we do not want this dude in the NFL. And my thing was always, if you got a league that's what 70% black, if black players stood together, they would have no power. I mean, the owners wouldn't be able to do anything. What are they gonna do? Kick all the black players out of the league? So I was
Well,
always curious to why didn't everybody get together as a group and say, we are not gonna allow you to blackball Colin Kaepernick. You can't cut us off.
well, because of the
Go ahead.
way is he going to go to? Which team do you want to put him on? You have
Mhm.
to give me a team he's going to. And I don't think Colin Kaepernick, for my taste, was talented enough.
Mm.
That's for my taste. Now, he might have
Mhm.
been talented forever because he went to a Super Bowl, so everybody assumed, hey, this guy's talented. And he probably was good enough to be a backup somewhere. But nobody's going to take that heat with him being on a roster and with all that commotion. People want it quiet. They don't want it loud. And so that's why he probably didn't get a position. But, it's easy to kind of just cast aspersions. But a lot of times it's the talent. Because if you're talented enough, these owners are trying to win. They're trying to make money winning.
Mhm. Mhm.
You could use the blackball thing, and I understand that too. But at the same time, I don't know if he necessarily made anybody else that much better, in my opinion.
Yeah, I hear that. So what do you think about the game now? I mean, you talked about this earlier. We look at basketball, right? And you had the Auburn Heroes big fight. Before that, you had Bad Boys in Detroit. You had Detroit. I'm sorry, you had Chicago. You had Boston. It was a fight, man. And then after that, they seem to be very. If you breathe on a guy, it's a foul going to the European game. You see in the NFL, and I see this too because of the concussion and things like that. But the game is so much softer now, right? Do guys ever talk about how it, how would I be if I played in the old era opposed to now when like you said, the quarterback, you have to just lay him down and rub him on his shoulder and make sure give
Yeah.
him a massage when you sit him on the ground. You know what I mean?
Well, yeah. Well, no, players don't talk about it. I mean, players are in it. They're businessmen. They're trying to, prolong their own careers and win games. They don't want their quarterback hit. And they police the game themselves. There's rules within the rules. I mean, receivers police themselves with DBs. Hey, you don't quick jam me, I won't cut you. It's just little things like that. There's rules there's gamesmanship within the game that players use to take care of themselves. The NFL, the league is taking care of the quarterback position. Um, who knows? Maybe we'll get more black quarterbacks. It looks like that's the trend, but we'll see.
Yeah, you like this receivers, man. They're like this so much easier to go across the middle now.
Yeah,
You
got
still can get hit,
class
but
runners going across the middle now. You couldn't do that back in the '90s.
no, no, man, you can do that when we were playing. So you went through all your NFL stint, and then you came back to University of Mexico, and now you're working in Black Student Services. So do you find just as much joy in working with the African Americans at University of Mexico as you did being a part of the league and when you played?
It's funny. My daughter asked me one time, her boyfriend, she's engaged now. Ned, where was your favorite place you've ever coached? And I coached at a little
Mm.
small Division II college in southern Minnesota. And we took those 9-hour bus rides. And I always liked because those kids were from all parts of the Midwest. We get the speed black kids out of Chicago and Milwaukee, and then we had kids, these Polish kids, Norwegian kids, and they would argue about the Green Bay Packers, the Minnesota Vikings, and the Chicago Bears. And that was some of the funnest times I had as a coach. The NFL, yeah, you're staying in 5-star hotels, you're staying at the Ritz Carlton and all that nice stuff. But it all goes back to the kids. I mean, I always enjoyed working with young people, and I think you get a lot of joy. I learn a lot from them. My daughter tells me to shut up and just listen sometimes. Got, the kids who are trying to find themselves, as young people, and they use a different language now, and I'm just trying to understand where they're coming from. But it's been
Mhm.
fun working with the black students at the student union. I learn a lot. I get to do the broadcasting, so I meet a lot of the players, both black and white, and
Mhm.
it's just a joy to be back at your university. I get a little cred because I'm an alumni, so it's fun.
Do you find I'm asking a couple of questions. I know you got to go, but I just wanted to
Yeah, I gotta
do
tear out
you
of
do
here.
you fi- yeah, do you find it different now that there's an attack on DEI, there's an attack on affirmative action, and anything
Right.
that's black services or black supporting, people are coming after. Do you see the difference in the programs? Are they trying to remove those? Or are you guys getting any
Yeah,
pushback like that?
yeah, they're trying to do that, but fortunately for us, it's not happening at the University of New Mexico. New Mexico is a majority minority state, and so it's a blue state, and so those kind of issues, you don't have. And then we have a president who's all about DEI. I ran the Jackie Robinson. I always tease Ron about the Jackie Robinson Day game that
Mm-hmm.
we have at the University of New Mexico that they don't have at Fresno State, where we
Mm-hmm.
recognize Jackie Robinson every year. And we have, players all wear number 42 like the Major League Baseball teams do. And that's all a result of DEI. I had this year, and I do it on purpose because baseball is the most white people think come there and just be white that we have in America. And so I had our vice president who's in charge of diversity, equity, and inclusion, and that's in her title
Mm-hmm.
throughout the first pitch this year. And I told her I apologized to her because I said, you've been here 3 years. I should have had you when you first got hired here. But it was great. It's just some of those things that, I think our university, a lot of other universities, we had the first Black Cultural Conference in over 70 years at the University of New Mexico. The first time it's ever been west of the Mississippi River. It's always in the deep South or on the East Coast. And we had it at the University of New Mexico. And they were just, all the Black cultural centers from around the country that came, they were just amazed at how pro DEI our president of our university is. And she's a white lady. She's been, VP at Florida State. She got into it with, she hates the guy who got $75 million. What's his name down at Texas A&M? That
Oh
was at
yeah,
State.
both was it Bo? I know it wasn't him. It was it Bo or that the coach, the old coach, right? The one
Jimbo Fisher. Jimbo
Jimbo
Fisher.
Fisher. Yeah.
She got into it with him over the quarterback, whatever, him getting in trouble. So she's been around. She's at Missouri, so this is her first job as the president here, and she's about diversity and inclusion and equity. And the AD's been all over me because I said, hey, look, we had several Blacks, but they've taken other positions at other places, and I said, well, that's fine, but you need to go hire some more Black people in here. And so he's been on
Mhm.
my case because we haven't had. I'm the only Black person in athletic administration over there the last 2 years. And I said,
Mhm.
what are you doing? And he was like, well, Ned, I'm trying. I can't get any Black people to stay here. Nobody wants to work here. I can't get, I've had some great people come in. They don't want to come because there's no Black people here. New Mexico is like 2% Black, the whole state. And so it's just those kind of battles. And I enjoy it because the kids really make me feel welcome there. I don't really have, they get on me for being old and, and all that kind of stuff. But I mean, we have really good, strong discussions. You know, um, we got trans students, we've got gay students. So that, you go through that, try to understand that. I'm learning a lot about that. So it's just a lot of fun, just kind of growing and learning.
That's awesome. Hey, well, Ned, I thank you, man. Thanks for being on Build Different. Man, you have quite a journey, and it's clear your life and your story. You are clearly built different, man. And thank you for coming on the show. I really appreciate you.
All right. Thank you guys for having me. Tell Rod I said thanks. And I knew he had to go to sleep. It's past his bedtime.
Yeah, I know you had to get an old man nap.
Yeah. All right. All right. Take care.
All right, man. We'll see you later.
See you later.
Bye.